Welcome to Aftertaste, your source for honest reviews on LA's dining scene. I'm Vlad, a chef and cook with 15 years of experience. My journey in LA started working for Jose Andres at the SLS Hotel, before taking the helm of Petit Trois with Chef Ludo Lefebvre. Now, I'm a private chef. I love seeking out new dining experiences, especially with my partner Nicole, who loves to eat and cook as much as I do. Ever since we've met, we've loved going out to eat. On our podcast, we're bringing you our perspective on those experiences in the city of food that we love. So get ready to dig in and join us for your next meal. Do you want to start with a cheers?
Yeah. Cheers.
Welcome back, everybody. Cheers.
All right. Dunsmoor.
Yeah.
So what made you put this on our list?
Dunsmoor has been on my radar for so long. Ever since I heard about this restaurant where there's no electrics, there's no blenders or mixers, they're making all the sauces by hand. They're doing everything by hand. And that is so unique. That doesn't really happen all that often in any restaurant, especially in LA. And that got me really excited. And then as soon as I found out that it was the old chef from Hatchet Hall, when Hatchet Hall won their Michelin star, and he's doing the same cornbread that Hatchet Hall had, I absolutely had to go back. And it got me really, really excited, especially that cornbread.
Yeah, I remember the night you came home from going to Hatchet Hall and you talking about that cornbread and just how excited you were about this piece of bread, and you just wouldn't stop talking about it. It made me really want to try it. So that's all I needed to hear. You know, I knew how much you liked it and I was in.
The thing about that cornbread is when I had it, Chef Brian, he had already left. So I felt like I didn't even have the full experience. And I've been chasing it ever since. When I make cornbread, I base that cornbread off of this cornbread, how I want it to come out. This is what I'm chasing.
And you're known amongst our friends as having a really excellent cornbread yourself.
Yeah, I think my cornbread wouldn't be the cornbread that it is if it wasn't for the one that I tried at Hatchet Hall and Chef Brian. We'll talk about it a little bit later in more detail, but just that alone, you know, if you go on their Instagram page, you're going to see this cornbread pretty much every day. You know, someone is posting about it. Every table orders it. It's one of their signatures, and it's one of the reasons to go. So I just want to talk a little bit more about Dunsmoor and the idea of Dunsmoor and Chef Brian and his philosophy and what this restaurant is trying to be, you know, because I think that's one of the most exciting parts about it is his philosophy of not using any electrics, cooking heritage food the way it was cooked when these recipes that he's inspired by were developed. You know, they were just cooking with wood over fire. And he says that the reason to do that is to slow everything down, to give him more opportunities throughout the preparation to make little adjustments. If something is too intense or it needs to be intensified, he can make that decision when he's making a sauce or developing a dish more frequently. And I just think that's such a unique approach to cooking that a lot of chefs won't do for a few reasons. A, it's a lot harder to execute. B, it's a lot harder to train a team to do that. You know, he might be great at that and he's been doing that for a decade, but the fact that he's been able to train a team to execute this consistently and get the accolades that he's starting to get, that's really what excited me about going here. And it's the thing that I look for in a restaurant. What is this restaurant doing that's unique that is going to keep me coming back and it's going to get people talking about it? And I think Chef Brian has it. When I first kind of told you about this restaurant, what were your first thoughts and impressions? Like, did it excite you or did it kind of give you a little bit of pause?
Both. On the one hand, I love vegetables and meat that are cooked over a wood fire. The flavor that it imparts is just so delicious. I love that. Going all the way with it and doing no motorized tools whatsoever, I was a little skeptical. It seems a little bit of a gimmick, but you really respected the chef and what he had to say, so that made me more open to it.
Do you still feel the same way now that we've eaten there? Is it a gimmick?
I personally am not a fan of orthodoxy, and I feel like it's too strict in orthodoxy. Mm-hmm. I think that saying we'll never use X, Y, or Z, it's too much of an absolute for me.
Okay.
However, there is at least one dish that we had that I don't think I would have liked it as much had it been made on a motorized contraption.
Yeah.
So
You see the vision.
I see the vision. I think I'm at least one step down the path of conversion to acceptance. I am stubborn, so
Fair.
we might have to eat there a couple more times for me to get all the way.
Fair.
That is my gut reaction to hearing their philosophy, but there is a part of me that thinks about being either in my parents' kitchen. You know, they had some toys, but not a whole lot, but we love to cook, so we just made what we wanted to make. And it didn't matter if we didn't have the right tool for it, we'd make it work. Or when I was like in college and I didn't have a real kitchen yet, like even a home kitchen yet, and if I wanted to make pesto, the only option was me with a knife. And if I wanted pesto, I was going to stand there and chop for 30 to 45 minutes. And you know what? It was great. It was great pesto. It tasted amazing. So
Sure.
I see it.
I mean, look, there's something to be said about stuff that's made by hand. Mm-hmm. You know, it says on the menu, you know, cooked over fire, made by hand. Like, this is, you know, when you make a pasta, you know, all the Italian grannies, they don't want to use any kind of motorized equipment. They want to use a rolling pin. They think that the heat from the electrics changes the flavor. Mm-hmm. So it is possible that he has something here. I just don't know how many chefs would deliberately choose to make it this hard. So walking into Dunsmoor, how did it make you feel? How was the space for you?
My first thought was kind of, this looks like the Viking meeting hall from Assassin's Creed Valhalla. It has these long communal tables with these candelabra things that have these thick, heavy candles that are all melting down. So it looks very rustic and very classic. So that was the first thing that struck me. That was my first thought.
Yeah, I felt like it was Geralt from The Witcher, you know, and you're sitting around like an old public house or saloon. Felt very dark and intimate in a way, but at the same time, like so energetic and alive. Like you walked in, it was loud, it was packed. The music wasn't so loud, but because of the way this building is, it was built in 1929, and it's got huge, tall ceilings. It's not square footage-wise all that big, but because of those tall ceilings and the communal tables, it just feels big. And it sounds big, and the sound travels well in there. Mm-hmm. It's, you know, it's a loud, bustling restaurant. And we were there on a Thursday night. It wasn't a weekend, but it was still quite packed.
So about the sound, it was a little bit loud for me. We had a reservation at 7:45, so it's peak bustle and hustle in there, and there were a lot of people in there. And there's no noise dampening at all, and the ceilings are very high. So every single noise gets really amplified. And unfortunately, I have a lot of trouble picking out words with my dinner companion or with the server if there's a lot of background noise. So it was very difficult for me to hear. And it was also, I felt like I was yelling a lot of the time, which is not something I typically enjoy. You know, everyone likes something different, and if you're easily overstimulated or you have issues like me picking out words, maybe this isn't the best place for you, or perhaps try and go a little bit earlier in the night before it gets too full. Also, I wanted to mention they have a wine bar, which is actually connected, like physically connected, which had a much more chill kind of vibe. And you can get a lot of the menu items also at the wine bar. So if you have problems like me, that might be a better play for you.
I think if I'm with a group, 4 to 6 people at one of those communal tables, I know we're already going to be loud. That's not going to bother me. But if I'm going on a date or if I'm taking, my mom or like doing some sort of business type meeting, maybe I want to be at the wine bar. Maybe I want to be outside.
And we should mention that the wine bar side is first come, first serve only.
Yeah, which is nice. It gives anyone a chance to be able to grab a seat.
I also want to point out, even with us, we have overlapping, but sometimes a little bit different preferences with the kind of dining ambiance, the kind of dining scene that we enjoy the most. And I think that's important for us when we talk about these restaurants. I want our listeners to know exactly what it's like and give them all the perspectives so that when they make a decision about where they want to go, they have all of the information.
Yeah, absolutely. Leave a comment. Let us know what kind of dining room you guys prefer. Do you prefer a noisy dining room or something a little bit more intimate?
So I also want to talk about our table, because when we sat down, we had this moment of, oh my gosh, we have the worst table in the house.
Yeah.
And I think we felt that way because we were right next to the entrance. We were right next to the host stand. It's kind of on the edge, so you can get forgotten. Oftentimes there might be a draft or something like that. And that's kind of not what ended up happening.
Yeah, I have mixed feelings about the notion of this is the worst seat in the house. Is there a worse seat in the house in a restaurant that knows what they're doing? Everyone that works there, they know the whole seating chart. They know which tables are more challenging for them to handle. Especially in this restaurant, the way the layout was, all these communal tables, the servers had to reach over a lot, and it was, you're kind of like bumping shoulders here and there. So they know which tables are going to be a little bit more challenging, but if they've worked there long enough and they're experienced, it's not going to be an issue. You're not going to feel like it's a bad seat if the restaurant knows what they're doing.
Yes. And the way they did that was by being very attentive to us. The busser was regular in coming around to clear our empty plates. Our courses were very nicely spaced out, so there was no big pauses where we felt like maybe we had been forgotten. The somm came over when we asked for her to come over, and it was just very smooth and very reassuring. We felt taken care of.
Yeah, I mean, besides sitting by the chef's counter, I think I'm happy with sitting on the outskirts. The communal tables, great if you're with a group, but if you're just with one other person, I don't think we would have been as comfortable. I think our biggest concern was we order a lot. When we go out, we take up a lot of table room, and the table we had was small. So we were concerned, we're going to fill up this table real quick. It's going to feel cramped. It happens to us all the time. That didn't happen here. And I think one of the reasons that didn't happen is there's something happening with restaurants. It's been maybe the past, I would say, 10 years, where a lot of restaurants, when you order, the server says, the kitchen is going to send out the food as it's ready, and we want your full order right from the beginning. So the pacing of meals is completely thrown off. I think a beautifully paced meal is falling by the wayside in restaurants, and restaurants that are choosing to do it the harder way, the more challenging way, having coursed things. If we order four or five things and it's going to be coursed, restaurants aren't doing that anymore. And it's frustrating because anytime a restaurant does do that, you end up having much better experience as a diner. You don't know which section of the kitchen is going to get busier. Let's say I ordered a salad and a steak and this and that, but the steak comes out first and the salad comes out way later. That doesn't work. So it was nice, like our server went through our entire order with us, told us the order in which things would come out, made sure we were okay with it, and it came out exactly like she said it would. We never felt cramped. It was perfect.
Dunsmoor serves both wine and beer, though it is definitely wine focused. And they have a nice, hefty wine list with, I don't know, must be at least 50 different bottles on the list and about 15 or so wines by the glass. We spoke to the somm. I knew going in that I was probably going to want a white to start because we got some chicken and we got some fish things. So I like a white to go with that and then move into a red for the steak. So that's the brief that we gave to our somm. So we ordered 4 different wines, 2 each, a red and a white for each of us. I started with an Albarino, which I really like for fish dishes, which we did start with. And then I moved on to a Malbec blend, which I got very lucky with because it is not actually by the glass. It is by the bottle. And they just happened to have one open. And it was offered to us when we were consulting with the somm. More on that later. Vlad had a Vermentino to start, which is also very nice with fish. Nice light white. A little bit of minerality in there is actually a very interesting flavor. Then moved to a Cabernet Sauvignon for his red.
Yeah, the first wine I had, the Vermentino, when you were drinking it and the nose, it really smelled like brie, like penicillin almost, but it didn't taste like that at all. It was so mishmashed with the nose and the actual flavor, but I thought it paired really, really well with the starters that we had. So I was really happy with that. And the only reason that I ordered the cab blend is the somm told a story about this vineyard used to be on this property that had a cult. And that story alone was the reason I ordered it. I didn't want to hear any tasting notes. It was a cab that was grown by a cult. I wanted to try it. And it was delicious. It was for me.
Yeah, sometimes a story is enough.
Usually for me, it's an easy sell. Give me some sort of weird information about it. I'm going to order it. I need to know. I'm a sucker for a good story. Just like this restaurant, I want to try things that are unique and that I might not ever have again. And I feel like making those choices is going to create memories that are going to be different than what everyone else is having. A lot of places in town serve all the same wines. These wine sellers are going and selling cases to all these restaurants. Mm-hmm. The somms that are finding the really funky stuff with the cool stories, that's what I want to try. So speaking of somms and wine, we wanted to give our listeners a little bit of advice, a few tips on how to navigate a wine bar, how to order wine from a somm, and, some steps involved with that.
These are steps that we've come up with throughout our dining experiences, and this is what works for us, and we recommend it.
I just want to preface before we get into the tips about the wine. We know what we like. We know grape varietals, but we didn't study wine the way a somm did, so oftentimes we're putting our trust in their hands.
Yes. These people have gone to school for it. They've practiced. They have refined their palate.
Their literal job is to do this, to tell you which wine you want to drink.
Yes.
And pull out information from you to get to that point.
With all that said, here are our tips for speaking with the somm at a wine bar or restaurant when you're trying to figure out what you're going to drink with your meal. Step 1, chat with your server about the food menu. This is something we always do, so this is not a somm-specific recommendation, but we would say you should always do that.
Step 2, once you've spoken to your server, figure out everything that you're going to order.
Step 3, talk to the somm, tell them exactly what you plan on ordering, and any preferences you may have, or even just feelings you might have for the night.
I think another thing that's important is tell them what you don't like. You don't want something too sweet. You don't want something too tart. You don't want something full-bodied. The more information you give your somm, the better chance you're going to have of choosing a wine for you.
The other thing is don't pretend to know more than you do, because you might think you know something that you don't, or you kind of know it and you're a little off. You might end up with a glass of wine that you're not really going to enjoy.
Yeah.
So giving your somm very honest and full opinion on what you like or don't like is going to be your best play here.
a place like Dunsmoor, wine bars specifically, the somm has really catered this list to the food and to their own personal taste, especially a place like Dunsmoor that has these small batch varietals. A lot of these wines, no one that's coming in here has ever heard of them. So putting your trust in the person that chose these wines for a reason is the smartest thing that you can do, even if you know a lot about wine. You know, I know plenty of people that are extremely knowledgeable about wine that would look at this list and feel overwhelmed. There's a lot of small names on here that you're never going to hear about. Talking to the somm is just going to get you a better experience every single time. And you get free samples. Now you get to try a few things and really decide what you like. Tell them what you don't like immediately because that just gives them more information.
Yes.
I think it's a smart move. Mm-hmm. And like you were saying before, a somm might have an open bottle of something that isn't offered by the glass. Someone had ordered it. They didn't like it. Now they have this bottle they have 5 glasses to sell max. Maybe everything that's on the buy the glass list isn't everything until you've talked to the somm.
Right.
So always talk to the somm.
What did you think about the menu?
This menu is enticing and not very big. And I think that's by design. They've chosen a really difficult way to cook the food. They don't have a large kitchen. So this menu, I think, is the perfect size for them. There's not that many entrees, but let me give you a little quick rundown of the menu itself. So there's a few raw items, some fish and some tartars and stuff like that on the very top of the menu. And then they have a larder section. This whole top section of the menu is almost identical to the wine bar menu. A lot of kind of in-house preserves and pickled things and breads. They also have a couple of larger format appetizers that can be entrees here and there. And then they have a few entrees, 3 or 4, and some side dishes, similar to what you would see in a steakhouse. Another thing to appreciate is their dessert section is not titled dessert. It's titled happy endings. And who doesn't love a happy ending? What were your thoughts when you first saw the menu? Because I know I already had looked at the menu a bunch of times and I was super excited.
I would say 90% of this menu at least made me curious, if not excited.
Every time I look at any of these restaurant menus, restaurants that we want to go to or a restaurant that I have heard about, I look at the menu and I think, oh man, I want everything. When you look at a menu and you can't decide what you want, green flag. Absolute green flag. And we had a really hard time ordering. Really hard because we wanted everything.
And we had to make some tough cuts.
Absolutely. One of the things that Dunsmoor is known for, and one of the reasons we came, was for the steak. Now, the steak is really large format. It's a 32-ounce bone-in ribeye cooked over the fire. It's $150. It's a big piece of meat, especially for 2 people. So going in, we knew that we were going to be a little bit limited to how much we can order because of how big this steak was going to be. We already planned on taking leftovers to go, but because we had the steak, we had to let the server know, like, hey, we're going to go with the steak. What else can't we leave without trying? Knowing that information in advance helped her give us some good guidance on what we should do, what we shouldn't do. So the first item that we ordered was the bluefin tuna toast. It is bluefin tuna with Florida botarga, saletta, and chives, and a little bit of lemon. Now, saletta, I had never heard of this or didn't really know what it was, and they made it up. Don't know what saletta was. It is an anchovy-infused olive oil that they call saletta. And I imagine they have a big batch of this in the kitchen, and they're like, we'll put some saletta on it. So that's just their thing. I thought this was a really, really lovely starter. It was a great appetizer. It was clean, the tuna was really tender and delicious, the shaved botarga was a really, really nice touch, and it got me really excited for my next course. It also paired really, really well with wine.
Yes, I agree. I wrote in my notes that it was subtle, almost to the point of being bland, but short of it. And I thought that as something in the first section, something that's going to open your palate, It was perfect for that.
So one of the other things that sets this toast apart is the bread. Dunsmoor, Chef Brian got so lucky. Within 2 months of them opening up Dunsmoor, Bub and Grandma opened 2 doors down. If you don't know what that is, we're going to link it in the description. It is one of the best bakeries in Los Angeles, and they make some of the best bread in town. And this is the only bread that they serve at Dunsmoor, aside from their cornbread, which they make to order. But all the bread that they have is 2 doors down in one of the best bakeries. What a gift.
Yeah.
He must have been so excited when he found out that they were opening. I would be.
The next thing that came to our table was the pickled and preserved vegetables, which I had either read or seen something about them. And if someone calls out pickles specifically, I'm always going to order them.
Yeah, I hadn't even seen it on the menu. It kind of flies under the radar because it's tucked in to the section of the menu that has just some like side sauces and sides and extra bread and stuff like that. So you wouldn't even really think of it as something to order, but I think it's a can't miss.
Yeah, it was really good.
Just to detail what kind of pickles came on it, it was some pickled beets, some carrots, some pickled okra, and a little bit of cabbage. And pickles themselves, cucumbers.
Yes, and those cucumbers were thick. They were thick slices, which was nice. So you got a lot of crunch with them and the flavor. They were just incredibly proper pickles. When you think of a pickle, you're thinking of this exact flavor profile. And they did it so perfectly. Super balanced, super delicious. But the standout for me in this little medley was the okra, which, you know, some okra is better than others. This is my favorite way to eat okra. Even the seeds became these almost popping bubbles of sour pickle flavor, and I found them just delightful.
Yeah, the flavor of the okra really reminded me almost of a spicy pepper, like a pickled pepper, something like a pepperoncini that you would have on a salad. One thing I want to preface about the pickles in general is all of them were naturally fermented. None of these were pickled with vinegar. They were all salt, lacto-fermented pickles, which just has a much funkier flavor. These were all really, really delightful. The carrots specifically, I want to talk about. They reminded me of my childhood. Growing up, my parents and my grandparents, we would always have this vat of pickled tomatoes. It was like a very Eastern European thing. But I think specific to my family, like we really were into these. The recipe was kind of shared and adjusted. Everyone had like a little bit of a different take on it, but there were always carrots in with the pickled tomatoes. And my favorite part all the time was eating those carrots because they were a little bit crunchier and they had this amazing fermenty flavor. These carrots on this pickle plate brought me straight back to that moment of my childhood, and it brought joy to my heart.
The beets were very beet-y. They taste like a beet tastes, and if you like beets, you're gonna like them.
Yeah, I liked the beets. I thought they were a little soft. I like a little bit crunchier beet when it comes to a pickled beet. The cabbage was really lovely, and yeah, it was just a great thing to have right in the beginning. I think you need these pickles in a place like this. The food here is pretty rich, especially the further down the menu you go, the more rich the food becomes. So having something crunchy and acidic to cut the richness and like reset your palate, I think is smart. And then, like when they serve a pickle with a sandwich, the reason they do that, you're supposed to eat the pickle first.
You are?
Yeah. The reason you eat the pickle first is you take a bite of the pickle and it opens up all of your taste buds. You salivate immediately. So the next bite you take, when you take that bite of the sandwich, it's going to taste better. If you didn't eat the pickle, the sandwich wouldn't taste as good.
I'm fascinated. I'm a little stuck on that. I did not know I was supposed to eat the pickle first.
Oh, well, You learn something new every day. Eat the pickle first. Don't neglect your pickles. So the next thing that we ordered that came to the table, and actually came at the same time as the pickles, was the chopped chicken liver. Initially, we weren't going to order that. The server convinced us of it. She said it's one of their top sellers and it's delicious. It's something that they would order if they came in. So of course we had to have it. And immediately I'm thinking to myself, well, they don't have any blender or food processor. So this chicken liver is not going to be extremely smooth. It's not going to be like a chicken liver mousse or any kind of thing like that. And it wasn't that, but it was fantastic. Specifically, it was chicken liver. There was bacon, rosemary, and this onion preserves. The rosemary was crispy and kind of dark and salty. The bacon, I think, was just like the bacon fat in with the chopped liver. And the onion preserves was extremely intense, extremely tart, and really punched through all the richness. And then they gave you a bunch of Bub and Grandma bread to smear it all over.
This is my favorite chicken liver I've ever had. I thought that the preparation of it being chopped really contributed to my enjoyment of it. It had more of a almost grainy texture, which might not sound great, but it made it feel hearty. It made it feel really satisfying, and I really loved it for that.
It was so intensely flavorful because of the seasoning and the onion jam and the rosemary. There was so much flavor packed into this chicken liver. And I think it's like a perfect appetizer because immediately after you eat it, you're like salivating and you want more and you just get more hungry, and it's really great with wine. The bread is perfect with it. And the amount of rosemary on it was really surprising. I was a little concerned at first because when you put a bunch of fried rosemary or smoked rosemary, I'm actually not quite sure how they got it that crispy.
I just assumed they just stuck it in the coals for a sec.
It's quite possible. It had that, fried rosemary texture. It was really crispy and tender. It wasn't too woody, how rosemary sometimes is, it gets stuck in your teeth. This was almost like rosemary chips, rosemary breadcrumbs that were sprinkled over the top of this. And every single bite that I took, I just wanted more and more and more. The seasoning was perfect. The texture of the chicken liver was smoother than I thought it would be. I thought it was going to be a little bit more old school Jewish deli chopped liver vibes, and it was a little bit smoother than that. And the bacon fat, I think, really helped with that. It just tasted great.
Because we had ordered so many things, I didn't really plan to finish it. And
you kept going back to it.
Yeah. Eventually, we were like 80 or 90% done. And so I was like, all right, I guess we're just going to finish this because it's really freaking good. So moving on, next we had an item that I was very excited about. It is the Aunt Emmys pork and green chili stew, which is, as described, it's a pork stew, and it is served with melted cheddar on top and house-made tortillas. Now, the reason I was so excited about this stew in particular is that I read an LA Times article detailing the impetus, the inspiration for this stew being on the menu and the tortillas that came with it. So this recipe was a family recipe for Chef Brian. His aunt made it the whole time he was growing up, and she was so intimidatingly good at making this recipe that his mom refused to even try to make it. So this is his homage to his Aunt Emmy's recipe. He makes it mostly the same, but a little bit different. He tweaks it according to what's available, but also the season. For example, in the summer, they'll brown the pork a little bit less so that it has less of that deep umami flavor and a little bit more of a lighter meaty flavor. It's also a little bit soupier, a little bit less thick in the summer versus the winter when you want something really warming and just like really comforting. I think this dish and all of its components are so emblematic of what you were describing about this place. And everything kind of has a story, and that's what I love about cooking is it's something that's handed down from person to person, or not even handed down, sometimes handed across. For example, your family has a recipe that I absolutely love that you made for me. You made these roasted, marinated roasted peppers that are delicious. And I've already started making them for get togethers with my friends. And now it's also a tradition that I have. And that's something that is true across all of food, all of cooking. You come across a new food that you've never tried that you love, you try and recreate it. Or there's a recipe that you grew up eating that you can't live without now because it's just part of who you are. And you make that for your friends, and you make that for your kids, and you make that for anyone else you might know in your life. And it just gets handed, and it changes a little bit every time. And everyone makes it their own, but at its heart, it's still the same thing. And that's what I love about this dish.
It tastes like home cooking. It tastes like Aunt Emmy's recipe. I feel like I know Aunt Emmy a little bit more now after having this stew.
And it's not even just the stew. It's also the tortillas that come with it. So his family would actually serve this dish with store-bought tortillas, but Chef Brian decided that he wanted to do it with homemade tortillas. So he went to one of the cooks in his kitchen and he said, hey man, like, can you find a recipe that you think would be good for these flour tortillas? Now this guy grew up having burritos made by his mom, and they were in flour tortillas. So he calls his mom, he says, hey mom, can I get the recipe for those? And she says, I didn't make those. Those are also store-bought. And he's like, okay, well, I need a recipe for these flour tortillas. So she says, you know what? There's a woman in my church who makes the best tortillas. Let me get you her recipe. And that's the recipe that this cook ended up making. He tweaked it a little bit for his taste and the restaurant's taste. But again, you have another story handed down through multiple people. It's like recipe telephone. So that's the tortilla that we ended up with.
Yeah, this tortilla was so unique. The article that we mentioned where you read this story has the recipe for the tortillas as well as the chili stew. Now, I guarantee you that this recipe pales in comparison to what we actually experienced at the restaurant, probably because they have it dialed down and they're giving you this recipe for a mass audience. But one of the things I found really interesting about the recipe for this tortillas is the inclusion of farmer's cheese and butter. Typically, a flour tortilla is made with either like pork fat or some sort of neutral fat. I've never seen a flour tortilla with the addition of cheese. And I really loved the texture of this tortilla. It was soft, but a little bit tart and fluffy, and I thought it really, really went well with the stew. The stew itself was delicious and maybe like just slightly under-seasoned, but not to a point where I was upset about it because the flavor of the tortilla was so good that I didn't miss it at all. It just tasted like really good, humble home cooking. And I thought it would be spicier. There's some serrano chilies in here and hatch chilies, and it wasn't spicy at all.
And we'll drop the link to that article in the description as well, so you can look at it for yourselves.
I also want to touch on what you said earlier, what Chef Brian talked about in the article about how he changes the recipe. He's said a few times that he's not really a recipe guy and he makes adjustments based on feel and overall, availability of ingredients. So this recipe is changing in the wintertime and the summertime. That is another one of those reasons why this restaurant is doing all of the hard things. Change the recipe. Make all the cooks learn it from the beginning, Nobody does that. But that's why it's so good. Aunt Emmy didn't do that. She's probably made the same recipe all the time. In fact, I think in the article he said that she didn't use the same cuts of meat all the time. She used what she had. And I think that is kind of what the inspiration of this whole restaurant encompasses. It's like, use what you have, shift things around, but at the end of the day, make sure it's delicious. All right, now a moment that I've been looking forward to, and that is reliving this cornbread. Specifically on the menu, it's titled Edna's Sour Milk Cornbread, and the Edna in question is Edna Lewis, a famous chef, teacher, author of The Taste of Southern Cooking in the 70s, probably one of the most famous books on Southern cooking in America. And Chef Brian based his cornbread technique on this recipe. The cornbread itself comes with white cheddar, hatch chilies, and a ton of butter. The reason for the chilies and the cheddar, Edna didn't do that. That's how Brian's mom made it for him. The corn that they were using is from Anson Mills, which is probably the best heirloom grain producers in the nation, reviving a lot of the old heirloom grains that went extinct after the Civil War. So this cornbread tastes like cornbread you may have had 100 years ago or 200 years ago. It's delicious. It is something that I seek to achieve, is making a cornbread this good. I don't know how you improve on it. It's not huge, but it's perfect for like 2 or 3 people. It comes with a huge amount of butter on top. The outside crust is the perfect crispness where you bite into it and it's an amazing texture. Doesn't get stuck in your teeth. It's not like too crisp, where sometimes cornbreads are just really overly done on the outside and it's crisp, but then it's kind of unpleasant. This is not that. It's so tender. And then the inside is just buttery and luscious, and the chilies and the cheddar, it's just a perfect cornbread. It's topped with a bunch of flaky salt and black pepper, which I never really see on cornbread.
And I really liked this black pepper, especially because it imparted flavor, but it wasn't super spicy. Just excellent. And in my notes, I just wrote down, holy shit. It totally lives up to the hype. It totally does.
Yeah.
And another thing that I saw that Chef Brian had said about it, he doesn't believe in putting sugar in the cornbread, but the butter on top is honey butter. So you get the sweetness from that. And ladies and gentlemen, I think that is the way it should be done, because this thing was awesome.
Totally agree. And I think adding sugar to cornbread changes the texture. This is a baked thing, and the science behind it, I also agree that adding honey butter for your sweetness is much better than putting sugar in the actual cornbread itself. The buttermilk, the sourness, the sweetness of the corn is all you need. So it's sweet, it's sour, it's crispy, it's a little bit spicy from the hatch chilies, but not too much. And then the cheddar adds that little bit of sharp richness. Perfect bite. You know, it's one of those you close your eyes when you eat it type of bites, so you can experience it a little bit more. I would go back just for this.
I think a lot of people do go back just for that. So next we had the big steak, the rib eye steak, which is served with smoked bone marrow and sea salt.
Ooh, baby.
Yeah, so it's a huge plate of meat and
big meat.
Big meat. And it was cooked perfectly. As soon as they set it down on the table, you can see the pink of the medium rare. It just looked, you know how they say you eat with your eyes? Mm-hmm. It was delicious, even just visually.
You knew right away this was going to slap.
You knew, you could see that char on the outside. You could see the red of the meat. It was just exciting to just look at it. And then you have the bone marrow bone with it, which we drizzled over the whole steak, which was just absolutely so decadent. Thank God for the flaky sea salt on the side, which managed to cut a little bit of the richness of it, though not a whole lot. Unfortunately, at this point in the meal, I was getting a little full, so I could not indulge quite as much as I would have liked to, but it was such a good steak.
I've had a lot of steak in this town and other towns. I've eaten a lot of steak. This was one of the most unique tasting steaks that I have had. It almost tasted like Texas barbecue. Mm-hmm. Tasted like bacon. The smoke that they got on the steak and the bone marrow, the flavor was so unique. And I want to comment, this isn't a Wagyu steak. It's not dry aged. There's nothing special about it. It just says beef ribeye on the menu. The way they're cooking it is what makes it special. They don't need all these fancy words and techniques or anything like that. This is probably one of the best steaks in town. And this is one of those, you know, when they decided to have a hearth and cook everything over wood, this is the result. You know, I think making a restaurant and kitchen centered around a hearth and a wood fire and having that be the only method that you're going to cook with is quite a ambitious challenge, but it allows you to have this opportunity to create flavors out of simple ingredients that you wouldn't have otherwise. I want to pull up this photo of the hearth, like a close-up of it. I went in there and there's the center raging fire where they have these big planks of wood on fire. They are just creating coals. And then the left and right side of the hearth is what they're using to cook. The right side, I've seen in videos, they kind of turn into a makeshift smoker. And when I took this photo, I noticed on the left side, I could see a steak resting up there on the top rack. And then to the right, I see all the bone marrow bones. So what I think they do is in advance of dinner starting, they pre-smoke all the bone marrow. And then they kind of leave it up there close to the hearth where it stays warm, but it doesn't get fully melty. And then your steak, the one that we had, they get a really, really crazy char on the outside of it. And then they put it up high and they let it come up slowly so that it's such a perfectly cooked steak, but the smoke and the embers are constantly perfuming this steak, and then you pour the smoked bone marrow fat on it. That's why it tastes like bacon and barbecue and a steak that is unlike any steak in town. It is delicious. The one side that we did have with the steak was the sliced Cherokee tomatoes. We were between the tomatoes and the cabbage, because we're thinking, all right, we'll get a vegetable, we won't get a starch. The server, and we told the server we want a light side. We're between these two, and the server told us the cabbage is not going to be light in the slightest. Yeah. It's covered in butter, it's braised in butter, get the tomatoes. So we did. They're sliced Cherokee tomatoes. They have some apple cider vinegar and a bunch of black pepper. They were extremely ripe, extremely juicy, and tart.
Beautiful tomatoes. They were cut thick, they're nice and meaty, but very tender. Where I felt like this side did not meet my expectations was, I think it needed a little bit more acid. I think maybe they needed a little bit more of a sharp vinegar to go with it. Because the tomatoes were so ripe, they were very sweet. And especially when accompanying the steak, which is so rich, I felt like I really needed some acid to cut through that and help me eat more was what I really wanted.
I will agree with the tomatoes. They weren't for me. I don't think I would have really ordered them had we not been eating together. I know we love ordering tomatoes all the time and we wanted something lighter, but it's not something I normally order with a steak. You don't see it all. Some steakhouses will have like a side tomato thing. I actually looked at the menu for today at Dunsmoor because they change the menu every day and the tomatoes aren't on there anymore. And they've moved to a new section of the menu as a different salad type of preparation. I think that the tomato season, it's September right now, the middle of September. It's nearing its end and already has neared its end. So these tomatoes were extremely ripe and extremely sweet. I think had we had the tomatoes a couple months ago, they would have been a little bit more on the tart side. So we just caught the very tail end of it. I can't really fault them for it. The ingredients speak for themselves. The tomatoes were too sweet.
So, desserts, or as they call them, happy endings. So I really liked this dessert menu. There were 3 baked options: a chocolate cake, a blackberry pie, and a sticky date pudding, as well as a hand-churned ice cream, which is made fresh daily, which is very interesting, as well as a variety of sweet drinks, which are different dessert wines. And just a quick note to anyone who is sensitive to caffeine, like myself, they do not have decaf coffee at this restaurant, which was really sad for us, well, for me. Vlad's fine with caffeine. I was sad because after such a rich meal, it would have been very nice to have a coffee. But unfortunately, I had to skip it.
Any other decaf lovers out there?
Let us know.
Give Nicole your support.
Yes, please. I need it. It's very hard out here. It's not that I love decaf, it's that it's necessary.
Well, decaf fans need love too.
Anyway, why don't you talk about the ice cream that you ordered?
Yeah, so the ice cream of the day, they offer scoops of ice cream, and we got the Green Gage Plum ice cream, which is also kind of nearing the end of the season, if not already over. It's a stone fruit. Green Gage plums are delicious, kind of one of my favorite plums. And before I even talk about the Green Gage plum flavored ice cream or anything like that, hand-churned ice cream? What other place is doing that? They don't have tools. They don't have an ice cream maker. They have to hand crank the ice cream every day. The texture of the ice cream was fantastic. It was better than most ice cream maker ice creams that I've had. Probably because I have to make it daily. It never gets crystallized or gross. It was really creamy. I really loved the Green Gage ice cream. It also came with a piece of, I bet you it's just like the scraps of pie dough that they couldn't use, that they crisp up and put a little cinnamon sugar on top of. So it almost like you get a little mini pie. It was great. It was delicious. The plums were almost like dried out or preserved. Like they weren't like fresh and juicy plums. They were, I think a little bit dehydrated.
Yeah, they had a little chew to them, which was nice.
Yeah. It almost texturally reminded me of like a rum raisin ice cream. It didn't taste like rum raisin, but that texture of like the jammy kind of chewy fruit, I thought it was really nice. I liked it a lot.
Yeah, it was nice. However, I preferred the other item that we ordered. And when I say preferred
is putting it lightly. What you thought of the Blackberry Pie?
So this Blackberry Pie, this is a proper pie. As the descendant of Pennsylvania Deutsch country, I have a lot of feelings about proper pie. And this one had a nice, thick, flaky crust. There is no, namby-pamby, thin, whatever. It was a nice, thick crust. It had the top on it. And then the blackberry interior. Wow. I don't know how they did that. It was a mix of whole blackberries as well as some macerated ones. And if you've made a pie or a berry pie, you know that sometimes when you do that, it can end up having some sour spots where you have the fruit still whole. These were so sweet and so pleasant and melt in your mouth. Oh my gosh. It was a transcendental experience. I think it is head and shoulders above any other pie I've had in this city. And I say that with confidence.
I will give you that this pie was definitely one of the best pieces of pie I've had out in a restaurant ever.
Then it came a la mode with honeycomb ice cream. And normally, I am a purist. Normally for a la mode, I want vanilla only. They chose this flavor so perfectly. When it melded with the pie crust and the filling, the blackberry filling, it was amazing. I couldn't believe how good it was. It was so good.
We eat out a lot together. We've been dating for several years now. I don't think I've seen this much joy out of you after that first bite at a restaurant ever. Very few occasions where I've seen you that happy. Certainly, I've never seen you that happy from a dessert bite, except for maybe one or two things I've brought home. for you to have dessert-wise.
That's true.
I have never seen that much joy in your heart and your eyes. You were giddy. You were excited. You were so full after the steak and couldn't wait to pack it up. And you were like, I can't have another bite. Oh my God, I can't move. And then the moment that you took a bite of that blackberry pie, it was like a rejuvenated person.
That's how I've felt.
Never seen anything like it. This pie gave you life.
It did. It totally
did. It was delicious. It was a fantastic pie. The way that made you feel just from, observing it gave me joy. I didn't even have the pie yet. I didn't even take a bite yet. But I saw the look on your face and I was like, wow, this is going to be a good pie.
Well, I think part of it too is I wasn't expecting it. No one really talks about the desserts. There was like one sentence in one article which was like, don't skip the dessert. And I was like, no problem. I won't.
Yeah, don't sleep on the desserts.
Do not sleep on the desserts. And so I wasn't expecting it to be so good. And, most pie in this city, it's fine. It's fine. It's pie. It's fine.
It's not a pie city.
It's not a pie city, though we do have a couple of pie places, but it's not our thing.
Yeah. But, this is a Southern food heritage restaurant. You got to have a pie. This pie delivered.
Yeah, it really did. The one thing I was craving to have with it would have been like a whipped creme fraiche or like a whipped cream, just to cut that sweetness just a little bit.
I feel like that ice cream was creamy enough.
Well, it was a honeycomb, so it was very sweet. The flavor was so perfect as a combination. I wouldn't want to get rid of that and replace it with vanilla. Yeah. So that's why I would say maybe a creme fraiche or just a regular whipped cream would be nice. But
I think had you had the coffee and they had decaf, you would feel differently.
That's true. I probably would.
I think a cup of coffee with this ice cream right before leaving.
Coffee and pie. Yes.
Yeah. If it's any indication, I would think the other two desserts are as good, but it was a great way to close the meal.
Really, really, really pleasant. Mm-hmm. It left me having a good taste in my mouth and in my tummy.
Before we get into the verdict for Dunsmoor, let's talk about the service a little bit more and our overall experience and comfort throughout the meal. It was really busy, and it seems like Dunsmoor runs a lean staff, which we're seeing more and more these days in LA restaurants. It's just a sign of the times. You need to have less staff just because you need to make your margins. So there were times where we may have wanted to talk about another drink or feel like we needed a server and there wasn't one. We were looking around. I don't know if that's necessarily anything they could do about that. But it did seem at times like they were a bit understaffed.
I don't think any individual's performance was lacking in any way. I just think they needed more hands in that dining room.
It's the sign of the times. LA restaurants are struggling. So having less staff and waiting a few more minutes isn't really a big deal for me. I'm used to it, and it's not something that I get too upset about or ding a restaurant for. They didn't make any mistakes. They didn't send us anything wrong. The pacing was perfect. When I went to the bathroom and I came back, someone had time to fold my napkin and leave it on the table nicely. So they're doing all the things that make you feel at home and make you feel hospitable. We never felt like we weren't taken care of. We felt almost stressed for them.
Yeah, like bad flagging them down and being like, hey, we need something.
Yeah, you could tell they're like, oh my God, yes, no problem. And then it was always handled.
Yeah.
Yes.
We never had to ask twice.
No. And I don't think we're like really needy diners. So I think that's part of going out to eat, especially in 2025, is having a little bit of patience and understanding when a restaurant is busy and understaffed, and it's not that they're not paying attention to you. It's like they'll get to you. They know you're there, especially in a well-run place. But overall, I thought the service was good. I can't say it was the most elite service that we have had in the city. We've certainly had better service, but the feel of the place and what they're trying to do, this is not a 2 Michelin star fine dining, like stuffy place where you're expecting that level. It feels like a pub.
Yeah.
So I thought the service was better than that. Between the overall feel of the place, the cornbread, the steak, the stew, all the little bites, the bread, I'm having a really hard time giving Dunsmoor anything less than 4 taste buds. It is number 10 on the LA Times 101 list. They are saying this is one of the 10 best restaurants in this city. I'm having a hard time disagreeing with them. I think it's one of the best steaks you can get in town. I think that cornbread will make you slap your friend for another bite before you let him have one. And I cannot wait to go back. I thought it was delicious.
Yeah, the quality of the food is unimpeachable. The technique, the uniqueness, especially here in LA, we really don't have anything else like this. Just thinking through the things that we had and how enjoyable all of them were. There's nowhere to ding points, you know?
Yeah. There's so many places during the course of the meal where I'm thinking, like, I don't know how you make this better.
Yeah.
We didn't have a whole lot of notes. Like, oh, this was good, but maybe next time I'd like it like this. It's not going to be perfect, but immediately when we left or while we're having a meal, I'm already thinking, who else do I want to come here with? It's like when you see a really good movie and you want to watch it again to see someone else's reaction. That's how I feel about going to this restaurant again. I want to take someone else here and watch them eat the cornbread for the first time so I can relive that memory.
Yeah, I mean, it also makes me excited to come back at different times of the year to see what a different menu would be like and what that experience would be like. And in a very positive way, I would look forward to that, to the changing, the ephemeral aspect of it.
I can't wait to go to Dunsmoor in December when it's 50 and freezing out. And I'm going to sit by the hearth and get myself a big piece of cornbread and eat a bite of steak. That's the vibe.
So in summary, Dunsmoor is 4 taste buds.
Absolutely have to go. Get the cornbread, get the steak, get the pie, get everything.
Is there another restaurant you'd like to see us cover? Leave a comment and let us know. And subscribe to our channel and like this video to support our project.
For more information on where to contact us, you can go in the video description and find a link to our Spotify, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, or wherever you get your podcasts.
All right, that's all, folks. See you on the flip side.
Bye-bye.